Hello and welcome to another episode of People Buying Houses. I'm Jonathan Goodbuyer, and this week it's my pleasure to show Chris and Janet around this beautiful country home in Nibelheim. Let's see what they think. Yes, they checked the foundations and apparently it's good for another 3 or 4 months at least. In which case, so what do you reckon, Janet?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all lovely, isn't it?
I mean, it's ensuite bathroom, private driveway, beautiful village location. I'm not sure what else you could ask for.
What are the neighbours like?
Good question. On this side, you've got Linda, lovely lady. She's a GP, runs the local clinic.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
And this side, you've got Cloud, who is a video game protagonist.
So that's why it's comfortably within budget then. Don't live next door to a video game protagonist, especially one from an RPG, because your house is either A, going up in flames, B, getting ransacked by demons, or C, going to be sucked into an alternate dimension by a massive flying whale.
It's almost a rule, isn't it, that the often picturesque, leafy hometowns of video game protagonists are completely obliterated.
And it's usually because they've ignored some blindingly obvious call of destiny at some other point in their lives. The big fat finger of fate pointing at them. You are the chosen one, come on, the world needs saving. Until it gets bored of waiting and figures it will have to forcibly kick them out their rural comfort zone by way of eradicating said comfort zone from existence. I mean, you've got to have sympathy with the other people living there, haven't you? Minding their own business, repeating the same line of simple dialogue. People who are now at best homeless, at worst possessed by demons and or dead.
Here are 7 times your lovely RPG hometown was destroyed. Thanks, protagonists.
First up, Seles, in the Legend of Dragoon, the hometown of protagonists Dart and Shana, although Dart's actual hometown of Neat was destroyed years earlier by the Black Monster.
So you'd think he'd have learned by now, wouldn't you?
After bunking off whatever household chores he should have been doing to go and chill out in the woods, Dart is attacked by a massive dragon called Firebrand, rescued by a mysterious woman named Rose, and then runs back home to discover it's been, surprise, burned to the ground by the bad guys, and that his best friend Shana has been abducted.
Why are these really strong, heroic protagonists never at home when this happens?
Turns out Dart and Shana have both been selected by destiny to be part of a new generation of Dragoon warriors, legendary fighters with the power to put really cool armour on with the help of magical dragon spirits. Shana is something else too, but spoilers, let's not mention that because I'm still holding out hope for a remake at some point. But the main thing is, poor Seles. All they wanted was Shana, but instead they decided to gut the entire place. The Legend of Dragoon doesn't even give you chance to wake up under your feather duvet and receive a quest from the local apothecary or whatever to go and collect some herbs from the valley over there. You know, standard get to know your home before we take it away mission 1 stuff. No, the game just straight up wrecks the place. Brutal. Tales of Berseria is next up, and this is a series that loves a good old bit of hometown destruction, but I'm going for Berseria because the start of this game is particularly gut-wrenching. The opening cinematic sees a young Velvet,
that's you,
escaping from a demon-inspired home wreck with guardian and mentor Arthur. He drops you off, gives you an apple as if that's somehow going to make you forget everything you've seen, and then runs off to save your big sis, Celica. He fails. Cut to several years later, Velvet, Laphicet and Arthur are living in another leafy sanctuary where you do get to do my favourite early game RPG thing of running around finding medicine in the woods, but then it all goes so very wrong.
Velvet returns to the village to find everyone dead and the place overrun with demons.
To make matters worse, it turns out Arthur, your longtime friend and father figure, is at the heart of all the bad things, and then goes one step further by murdering Laphicet as part of some horrific ritual sacrifice. Suitably enraged, Velvet ends up with a blood-sucking demon arm and rips a bunch of demons to shreds with it. But wait, they were all just villagers after all. So let's recap. 2 entire settlements and scores of people all brutally killed and or possessed within the first hour of the game.
Don't buy a house next to Velvet.
The problem with our third entry, Xenogears, is that if you're living in the nice, peaceful village of Lahan, you haven't technically chosen to live next to a video game protagonist.
You know, I've got no time for people who phone their local council all like, oh, there's children playing football in the sports field I've chosen to live next to, or oh, my entire home's been destroyed by an evil empire that was after that video game protagonist I decided to be neighbours with.
But when the protagonist is delivered to your village after you've settled there, as is the case with Faye in Xenogears, then you have to feel some sympathy. What's worse is that Faye is technically the one who destroys the place while attempting to defend it by jumping inside a massive mech or gear, which then malfunctions and does this. Way to thank them for accepting you as one of their own, Faye. Like, I'm totally Dan in this cutscene here. I know it's not Faye's fault, but... Oh, I hate you!
I mean, come on. Their entire village violently wiped off the face of the earth. Family members killed. Flipping protagonists.
Entry 4 is Fallout 4, and I know the destruction of Sanctuary Hills has nothing to do with the protagonist really, but you survive, don't you? So you get the blame by default. And what a lovely home it is, a perfect picture of 50s suburbia, tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, a beautiful family home, a new baby, life is rosy, until
you all have to evacuate as the worst case scenario happens.
Panic, disarray, people screaming and running, not knowing how much time they have left. You and your family are 3 of the lucky ones. You get taken underground to the vault in the nick of time, like literally 2 seconds later, and you would have been vaporized.
After your partner is murdered in cryosleep and your son is kidnapped, thanks beginning of the game, you then get to return to Sanctuary over 200 years later.
To be honest, it looks pretty good for a centuries-old nuclear ruin, but there's no denying Sanctuary epitomizes the hometown of the video game protagonist, a burned-out shell, ghosts of memories stalking the desolate landscape. Oh, and Codsworth, his batteries are still going strong.
It's been ages since we've had a proper family activity. Checkers, or perhaps charades.
How's it going, mate? I haven't got a house anymore, but at least you're here. Suikoden 3 is entry number 5, a game that offers a fresh take on the whole destroying the protagonist's hometown thing by making you sit through the destruction twice, but from 2 different viewpoints.
You get to play as 3 characters in Suikoden 3, and they don't really like each other very much, at least not at the start.
Hugo, who's the closest you get to a poster boy main character in Suikoden 3, is the son of a clan chief who starts the game on a peace mission to Zexen with the intent of offering a truce. Even if you haven't played Suikoden 3, you can probably invoke your JRPG detective powers and deduce that things don't go very well. Hugo returns to Koraya, his hometown, to find it, yes, on fire. Not only that, he then witnesses his best friend Lulu being murdered by Chris Lightfellow, captain of the Zexen Knights.
I mean, if Hugo wasn't your typical JRPG protagonist before, he certainly is now.
But come the end of the chapter, you get to play as one of the other protagonists, and one of the other protagonists is Chris Lightfellow, the captain of the Zexen Knights who's just done lots of bad things, and you get to see everything from her point of view. Her point of view is that of the disillusioned knight, carrying out the orders of a maniac while fighting the age-old internal battle that arises when loyalty and personal morals collide.
Basically, Chris's story is all about how obliterating Hugo's hometown and killing Lulu made her feel a bit sad.
It's more than that, obviously, and Suikoden 3 is a brilliant JRPG often overlooked in favour of Final Fantasy and the like, but it's a series with great characters, great stories, and, yes, protagonist hometowns that barely survive an hour of gameplay. Next up, we've got Lost Sphear, a spiritual successor to I Am Setsuna, and a game that's essentially a love letter to the JRPGs of yesteryear.
A love letter that reads like this. Dear JRPGs, I love your world maps. I love your characters and how they all talk in speech bubbles. I love your turn-based battles and epic quests. But most of all, I love the way you destroy all the towns and villages in which your main characters live, so I'm going to do all of those things too.
In fact, you get a 2-for-1 with Lost Sphear. Literally the first thing that happens in the game is you play as a king defending his fallen homeland. All his loyal knights evaporate and the camera pans up for a bit of mystic backstory. Fast forward to the present day and we're controlling Kanata, Lumina and Locke, 3 friends who commit the cardinal sin that is running errands outside of town.
In a horror game, don't check out the basement. In an action-adventure game, don't remove the golden artifact from its pedestal. In a JRPG, don't run errands outside of town.
When the trio return to Elgarth, they notice the town simply isn't there anymore. Not burned, not overrun with vicious monsters, just gone, like someone's accidentally pressed undo on a painting app, which is incredibly sinister, just being erased from existence, townsfolk and all.
Luckily, you have the power to restore the town later on, but flippin' heck, imagine living there and just being rubbed out.
Our final entry is from Final Fantasy. I mean, come on, have you seen these videos before? And this is a series with lots to choose from. Cloud's hometown is burned in Final Fantasy VII, pretty much every town is blown to bits in Final Fantasy IX, but we're going for Xanakund in Final Fantasy X because, good lord, what happens to this place is unlike anything you've ever seen before.
So we've had villages that burn, that are blown up by faulty mechs, nuked, ravaged by demons, rubbed out. What other way could there be to destroy a place?
How about being sucked into an alternate dimension while everyone's busy watching underwater football? Unlike most of the other hometowns in this list, there's nothing quaint about Xanakund. It's civilization at its peak, a thronging metropolis full of towers and lights and people. Powerful, comfortable, stable. You think you'd be safe living there, but no. Perhaps it's Auron that's the problem. When another main character arrives, video game physics obviously go haywire and cities eat themselves, which is kind of what happens with Xanakund. That, and it's attacked by a colossal entity known as Sin, a being not perturbed by the constraints of gravity, time and space, and that is very, very good at turning up and ruining everyone's day.
Xanakund effectively disintegrates, its entire physics break down, it's pulled apart atom by atom.
What actually happens to it I'm not going to spoil because I don't need to, and if you're a Final Fantasy newcomer, I'd always recommend starting with 10 on PS4 as it's gorgeous and really easy to pick up. Just know that Sin is bad news, and when you see it appear, destruction is never far behind. I mean, good lord, look at that. There is simply no defense. So there we are, 7 times your lovely RPG hometown was destroyed. Thanks, Protagonists. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments if you have any other examples, and hit that notification bell to make sure you know as soon as another Friday feature goes live. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.
For the players.